All right. Welcome, everyone. We've just opened the doors and they've been open a good 3 or 4 seconds, and we already have over 200 people. This is very exciting. And Chelsea, I was just asking you a question. You're in Wayne and Pike counties, right?
Yep, Wayne and Pike, Pennsylvania.
And so that you were saying that that's up between New Jersey and New York, right?
Yeah, we're about 4 miles from each state where I am right now in Milford.
Oh, cool.
Yep, I actually live in New Jersey.
Oh, really?
It takes me about 6 minutes to get to work.
How about you, Erica? Do you live in Pennsylvania or New Jersey?
I live in Pennsylvania. I actually live right in the middle, kind of Wayne and Pike counties, meaning that my side of the street falls on Wayne and Pike County falls on the opposite side of the street. So we live right there in the middle of it all.
Oh, I never knew that. And so, is there a particular thing that you all are known for, like hot pretzels in Philadelphia, or
Oh my gosh, I don't think so.
I don't either. But now you got me thinking about it.
You know, I
We
feel
have
like
a
we
lot
should
of
know that.
coffee shops, a lot
We
of
love good
breweries.
coffee.
Yeah.
breweries? Oh,
Yeah,
so there's
there's
a
quite a
beer.
few like local, small, hometown type breweries.
Oh, that's interesting. I always like to try new beers.
Who
Well,
doesn't?
Ooh, we're also a very rural area. Pike County is also a very, I mean, Wayne County as well, but Pike specifically is a very rural area. So there is a lot of sightseeing for people to do, a lot of parks, a lot of hiking trails, and just it's really
oh.
beautiful.
Well, okay. I hope that everybody caught that. So if you're looking for a place to go for maybe a nice weekend away, you can pick Wayne County. I know I haven't been up there and I probably would like to do that. And I see that there are people who are, we're almost at 800. And people are telling us where they're from. Please, at any time, go ahead and put your name and what kind of work do you do or where you're from into the chat. We love seeing where people are from.
I
And
did see somebody comment, it went way too quickly for me to catch who it was, but somebody commented Lake Wallenpaupack, and we are
Hello.
really, yep, we are right by Lake Wallenpaupack. It's our middle point.
so, Jamal, are we about ready to start?
We are going to start, yes. So, welcome everyone to our virtual speaker series for 2024, which is being provided by the PA Care Partnership in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, which is OMSAS. And today's webinar is human trafficking. It could be happening in your backyard. So, with that, I will turn it over to Nancy.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I also appreciate everybody's patience that we had such a turnout, that once we're at 868, that once we hit 1,000, people are going to be streamed over to YouTube, where we have a live stream going on of this presentation, because we can only fit 1,000 in this room, only fit 1,000. Isn't that exciting?
A good
And
problem to have.
yes, yes, I would refer to that as a champagne problem. Our speakers today are Chelsea Falatico. Oh, did I get it right?
Close enough. Falatico.
Falatico. Oh,
We practiced.
I practiced,
Nancy, we can practice this.
Chelsea Falatico and Erica Thaxton from Victims Intervention Program, and their acronym is VIP, which you'll see next to each one of our speakers' names on the screen. Chelsea and Erica will be presenting a PowerPoint. They'll be going back and forth and each taking their watching the chat and the Q&A. I would ask you all to please post any questions you have when you have them into the Q&A. We'll all be keeping our eye on it. And we're very much interested in having your questions be a part of this presentation today. And all you have to do, if you don't know this, is to run your mouse underneath at the bottom of the Zoom screen where you see Q&A. And I see one question has already been posted. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea and Erica, and they're going to start the PowerPoint.
We are. Okay.
So Chelsea is setting up the PowerPoint. Here it comes.
I am. Hold on one second. Let me just make sure that we're getting this.
Looks good, Chelsea.
All right, perfect.
Charles, real quick before we start, just so everybody knows about the copy of the PowerPoint. Do you want to go ahead and address that one? I know we had talked about it.
Yes. So unfortunately, there isn't going to be a copy of the PowerPoint available, but this webinar is being recorded. So if you head over to the PA Care Partnership website, it's not going to be instantly available, but in the next day or two, the recording will be available for you to rewatch. And we also have a few links to different resources available on the website as well. I think, Erica, would you mind dropping that in the chat?
Yeah, I most certainly will.
Thank you very much.
And I would also like to add to that when the recording is available, I'll be sending out an email to everybody in attendance today that links them off to the recording, the resources, etc. So you will be receiving that within another day or two.
Awesome. Thank you. Great. So I think one thing that's really important to address before we begin is the topic that we're covering. It can be very heavy. It's not a wonderful topic to cover, but it is really important. So because some of the topics can be triggering for people, please take care of yourself today. So if at any point during this presentation, you're just feeling overwhelmed, you feel like you need to step away, turn the screen off, walk away, turn your camera off. We're not pressuring anybody to interact or turn their cameras on. Again, it's being recorded, so you can log off today if today is not the right day for you to watch this, and you can rewatch when you feel like you're in a better place. And if you need additional support, please reach out to Erica or myself. We will be talking about the victim service providers in your specific county. So if anybody needs additional support, please contact the victim service provider in your area so that you can get that support, and then you can continue doing the good work that you're doing. As Nancy introduced, my name is Chelsea Filatico. I am the Community Outreach Manager for Victims Intervention Program. And with me today is Erica Thaxton. She is our agency's medical advocate. We are going to be doing our best to monitor the chat and the Q&A, but if we don't get to your question right away, there is going to be a quick Q&A at the end of the presentation. And even then, there's a lot of people in the room. So if we don't get to every question, there might be a follow-up session for just Q&A. We haven't figured that out yet, but that is a possibility. So we're going to do our best, but we can't make promises that we will get to all 1,000 questions. I'm gonna talk very quickly about VIP for time's sake. I want to make sure that we respect everyone's time. But Victims Intervention Program is the victim service provider for both Wayne and Pike County, Pennsylvania. And we serve survivors of crime and abuse, significant others, and those who are collaterally affected by a crime. And when we say crime and abuse, our main populations are survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, stalking, identity theft, insurance fraud, any crime that's really going to impact a person's ability to function. And we provide a lot of services. And this is just a quick list that can honestly be put into an hour-long presentation in itself, but we're not going to do that. Because, like I said, we might not be the victim service provider in your specific county. So I do encourage everybody to take some time, if you're not already familiar with your service center, to please visit one of the following websites. Again, these are in the resources that are available on the PA Care Partnership website. Look up who is responsible for your county. We might not be the service provider, but I promise there is one in your county, because there is a service provider in every county throughout the Commonwealth. In fact, there's one in every county throughout the United States. So even if you're not joining us from Pennsylvania, you have a program close to you that can offer very similar services as VIP. And our goal today is to make sure that everybody leaves this room and is able to define human trafficking and understand what it really means, identify the signs of trafficking or the red flags that somebody might be in a trafficking situation. We hope that you leave here with an understanding of the grooming process and understand how somebody might be brought into the trafficking lifestyle. We want you to know where it happens specifically in the United States, and we want to make sure that everybody leaves with some tools in their box on how to help a victim that they might come across in the course of their work or your personal life. This is not going to be a webinar that's going to fix the problem, but we hope to leave you with a better understanding and, like I said, just some tools that you can pull out should you ever need to. I do want to say that all of the statistics that we're going to talk about today are coming from the National Human Trafficking Hotline's 2021 report. That's the newest report that we have. I'm sure that in 2 days, they're going to release their 2023 report, and we can do this all over again. But right now, we're working with numbers that come from the 2021 report. And I am going to pass the mic over to Erica. She's going to lead us through the first few agenda points for today.
All right. To start with, defining human trafficking. So we could really get down in the weeds about this as far as the legal definition and this and that, but I don't really feel like that's what we're here for today. So to understand it in general, human trafficking is nothing more than modern day slavery. There are actually many, I want to say 5 different subsets of human trafficking when we're looking at it on a global scale. However, here in the United States, we actually only recognize commercial sex and forced labor to be considered human trafficking. When learning about human trafficking, you may see a lot about this act and means and purpose. Basically, what that's saying is there has to be an act such as recruiting your victim, transporting your victim, providing a place for your victim. The means, force, fraud, or coercion has to exist with adults when it comes to human trafficking. And the purpose is obviously for you to gain the commercial sex or forced labor. Force, fraud, and coercion is what is needed to be proved within a court of law if your victim is over the age of 18. It is very important to note that anytime your victim is under the age of 18, you do not have to prove any of those things. It is illegal to sell a child at any time and for any purpose. When we are looking at force, fraud, and coercion, the number one way that this is proven in today's society would be through the internet, fake relationships, job offers, that sort of thing. When we look at force, is there physical violence? Is there manipulation? Is there threats of deportation, things of that nature? And that also goes into coercion. You know, you can manipulate somebody, especially with the use of love. A lot of times your victims don't go into these relationships with the false pretenses that the perpetrator has. Charles, can you?
Sorry, yeah.
Slide? You're okay. I just realized you have control of that. When we are looking at where does trafficking occur? Trafficking occurs everywhere. In 2014, Pennsylvania first enacted it's called Act 105, and that is Pennsylvania's anti-human trafficking law. With that, that defined human trafficking here on a state level. Since then, there's been hundreds of cases brought before the courts, but also the first cases to ever occur in Pennsylvania were prosecuted in Lehigh, Berks, Montgomery, and little old Wayne County. So this occurs across the map everywhere. A lot of times there is a business front, or, you have to have that fake job offer or something in order for the trafficking to continue or to happen. You can't just have this big neon sign, blinking in your window. So what do they look like? For sexual exploitation, it's oftentimes looking like prostitution, pornography, escort services, strip clubs. When we're talking about forced labor, maybe it's agricultural work, cleaning services, nanny services, both live-in and not, landscaping, carnivals, health and beauty, like hair and nail salons, massage parlors, health spas, peddling or begging. This is when someone is being forced to beg on the street or to provide street sales. Hotels and hospitality, the front desk, maids, cooks, maintenance, as well as hotels provide the #1 venue for where the act itself takes place. Go ahead, Chels. Very important to distinguish between smuggling and trafficking. A lot of people use these terms interchangeably, but they are not the same. When we're talking about smuggling a human being, it's oftentimes a voluntary decision, right? A lot of times the victim is wanting to leave wherever they are, maybe because of poverty or government barriers, things of all sorts of that nature, violence, oppression. When we're looking at trafficking, this is the selling of people for profit. This is not a voluntary act. It's involuntary, and it's typically done with the use of, like we said, force, fraud, or coercion. Go ahead. The scope of the problem, this is looking at the national hotline numbers. We have 50,123 signals to the hotline on the national level. 10,000 of those signals were actual cases where human trafficking was identified. So when a call first comes in to the hotline, some of them automatically get filtered out and sent to the child abuse hotline or the elder abuse hotline, and that's based upon the computer algorithm. So 50,000 is the number that actually came in as possible human trafficking. And then 10,000 were then identified as that is exactly what it is. Over 16,000 victims were identified through this hotline. And remember, a single case can have multiple victims. A good size, I should say, not true, but a good size trafficking ring can have anywhere from 3 to 7 victims all working underneath the same trafficker. To date, 28% of those calls involved minor victims. There were 11% adults, 61% unknown. How does that happen? How do you not know, right? So I want any of you that have children, I want you to think about this. If you had a daughter at Christmas time, could you walk in a store and buy her a shirt that covered her belly button? Right? A lot of these identifying victims, they're identified from a distance, right? Maybe even over the phone. Can you truly distinguish someone's age over a phone call? Right? Or, some of us have kids that look much older than what they actually are. My son has a full beard at 14 years old. You would not know, even if you saw him in person, that that is a child. That is nowhere near an adult yet. So that's how we get that large accounting of the unknown age. The history of human trafficking, especially in our country, the victims have overwhelmingly been female. However, make no mistake, there are female victims, male victims, unknown, right? Maybe it's a third party calling, giving this information. So we don't really know who all the victims entail. Also transgender victims. We have non-binary victims. Across the range, there's nothing that says you can be or you can't be a victim. Go ahead. The victims themselves truly can be anyone. There is not a single person that either we are or we encounter that is above being a victim of human trafficking or truly of any crime. Just the same as perpetrators, right? There's not a specific person. When we are looking at victims, there do tend to be those that are at more of a higher risk. This could be for numerous different issues. A lot of times, you know, we can look at those glaring red flags, you might call them, like they had a traumatic childhood or they were foster care, this and that. But regardless, the number one, or I should say number 5, most targeted communities are going to be your marginalized and oppressed groups, people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ+, homeless youth, and foster children. I'm going to take a minute real quick and see. Feel free to place in the chat, what do you think the average age someone is when they are brought into human trafficking? Oh, that's a lot of numbers. But it looks like a lot of you are right there in the average. So honestly, 12 to 14 years old. When looking at stuff now, that actually is extended out to 15 years old, but that is the typical age that someone is first trafficked. Children as young as 3 months old have been sold within the United States. So it is not just those ages. There are also very many adults who first entered this victimizing life as adults. More than 80% of the commercial sex victims within the United States are either natural born US citizens or legal citizens of this country. So a lot of times in our minds, we have this feeling of, or this thought, kind of a myth that it's a lot of immigrants. And although, yes, it does, it's not always that way. In fact, it's usually the person that may be sitting right next to you, the ones that you wouldn't even suspect. So we cover that the average age that someone is first trafficked. Here's the interesting part. In the United States, the average life expectancy for anybody, give or take, is 75 to 80 years old. When you become a victim of human trafficking, your average life expectancy drops from that 75 to 80 years to 7 to 10 years. If you're a 12-year-old, there's a very high likelihood you will not even see maybe your 18th birthday, but especially high for your 21st birthday. The most common causes of death is anywhere from homicide, suicide, communicable diseases, overdose, and drug addiction. Go ahead. When we are looking at just the 2021 National Human Hotline statistics, and these are the most recent, as Chelsea was saying. However, we already have kind of decided that tomorrow they'll probably release the 2022 ones, so they won't be the most recent anymore. Every 2 minutes, a child is trafficked to be sexually exploited in the United States. Some of these numbers are just staggering to really think about. In 2021, there were majority of minors were the victims that were identified. There were about a third of adults, but again, the overwhelming majority is unknown. 14% were Latina, 5% Asian, white accounted for 4%, 3% African American, and again, as the pattern has shown, the overwhelming majority is unknown. We went through the gender numbers, but again, 65% female, 17 male, gender minority of 1%, and unknown being 18. And the vulnerability, those can be considered some of those red flags or whatnot. 54% of that year were immigrants. 10% had mental health issues, 9% substance use, 8% unstable housing or homelessness, and 7% were our homeless youth. The unaccompanied refugees minors went up from 2020 to 2021 by 649%. That means the unaccompanied refugees minors accounted for 17 persons in 2020 and 133 in 2021. And in the big scheme of things, you know, you're thinking about the population of the country or the state or anywhere, 133 doesn't sound like that much. However, these are children we're talking about. That's 133 kids that were separated from their parent in a strange place where they didn't know anybody and possibly could not even speak the language to communicate their wants, needs, their pain, their little bits of happiness that they might be feeling throughout this, and all that sadness and heaviness that's in their heart. Go ahead. Recognizing the signs of human trafficking. Human trafficking is so easy because it's hidden in plain sight, right? I want you to think about the last time you went to Walmart, the last time you went to the grocery store. As you walked through those aisles, can you tell me a number of people that you encountered that were adult and minor? What about 2 adults? Or a group of people that all came together? Right? You walk right past this more than once in your lifetime because it's not hidden, especially in a country where we have the highest divorce and remarriage rate in pretty much the entire world. It's not uncommon to see adults out in public with a child that's not theirs, right? Or that looks nothing alike. We have a high adoption rate. We have a lot of biracial, interracial marriages and children now. We also have a huge rate of step parents. Not to mention, you know, 40, 50, even more years ago, if you saw an adult and child out at the store, that was their parent. That was normal. Nowadays, myself, I could have anywhere from my own children to a whole slew of children with me at any given time. It's just a different time that we're living in. So this is very hidden in plain sight. Things that you may notice, maybe they appear or sound or look to be disconnected from family, friends, their community. Has a child stopped attending school, or has their grades and attendance, has something just been totally out of character for them? What about a sudden or dramatic change in behavior? Do they seem disoriented or confused? Maybe showing signs of mental or physical abuse. Substance abuse also plays a big part in human trafficking. What about, obviously, physical assaults, any bruises, abrasions, things like that? Do they seem fearful, timid, or submissive? Do they seem malnourished? Or even if they don't, do they seem hungry? Do they look to be dehydrated? What about sleep, right? We see sometimes that you could say, like, yo, they're like a walking zombie. Is that their normal, or is something drastically changing? When you ask them questions, do they answer you, or do they look towards their kin that is there with them? Do they appear to be coached on what to say? We all know, especially when it comes to children, there is no telling what's going to come out of their mouths. And sometimes you hear such a perfect response, you know it didn't come from them. They've talked about this before. They've practiced this situation. Do they have any personal possessions? As an adult, do they have any form of identification? Do they have any form of insurance? Where do they live? Do they get to come and go as they please? We also see sometimes tattoos and branding. This used to be a lot bigger a little while back, but since then, a lot of people have caught on. I remember even seeing about this in the news years ago. And just as the public catches on and becomes educated, the traffickers evolve too, right? So when we do see these tattoos and things, it's typically in a place that is very easily visible. The idea of this is if that victim is walking down the street, any single other pimp in that area knows that that victim is taken. They work for somebody already. It's also commonly where you will see different signs of cash symbols, maybe money bags or dollar signs. You'll also see a lot of property of. And one of the things that I always talk about when I give these presentations is I used to work in the operating room, and you would see some pretty bad tattoos, right? That tattoo you think is hidden forever. It's going to be shown in the operating room. But I have never known an adult or a child to be willingly branded with a hot cattle iron. If you are seeing this, there is a story there. Maybe it's human trafficking, maybe it's not, but I highly, highly advise you and recommend that you follow up on that. Also, it is important to know that all of these indicators do not have to be present in any given victim. You may have indicators or things going on that are nowhere included in this list. You may have all of them. There's no textbook victim or victimization profile to go on. Studies have found that almost 3/4 of all sex trafficking survivors in the United States have come into contact with a healthcare provider during their trafficking, and not one was recognized as being a victim. This is also only focused on those victims that actually received medical care, which is usually at a point that is so dire, there's no other option. All of our statistics, whether it be reports or things like this, these are only going off of those that have had that contact. A lot of the victims of human trafficking, although maybe seen out in public, they don't get that one-on-one individual contact with anyone. Healthcare providers are the #1 profession in this country that have that interaction with victims of human trafficking, of abuse, of sexual assault, or anything of that kind. Go ahead. So a lot of the victims themselves don't even recognize that they are victims of human trafficking. And why is that? Because the majority of them know their trafficker prior to this being started. So again, in our minds, we all think and preach stranger danger, right? You know, as my son calls it, the person in the hoodie van, you know, you stay away from that. But that's not what we're looking at here. Does it happen? 100%. This world's crazy. You can never say that nothing happens in a certain group. But in 2021, the top 3 traffickers included family members, intimate partners, and employers. When it comes to sex trafficking victims, they are more often recruited by intimate partners and family members than anybody else. And when it comes to labor trafficking victims, they are more often recruited by friends and acquaintances than anybody else. These are people that prior to all of this, there was an established relationship of trust built already. As a trafficker, that drastically cuts down on the amount of work that you have to do. You already know a lot of the information. You already know that person, and you know that they are likely to listen or to follow behind you. Honorable mentions in this amazing category would be coworkers, acquaintances, drug dealers, and landlords. It also can include different types of facilities. Go ahead, Chess. people don't usually wake up in the morning and decide they're going to be a trafficking victim. They are recruited somehow. That recruitment can be by a family member, like we were saying, or it can be by a friend. You know, you're in middle school, high school, and your friend has the brand new iPhone and the Jordans and these amazing things. And how do they get them? Well, she gets them from her friend or his friend, blah, blah, blah. That is recruitment. We really took a step forward when we figured out this whole internet thing. But what we didn't realize was the security and the safety that we were giving up in order to have that access. 64% of all trafficking recruitment was internet-based. More than half of that was done just through social media alone. The top recruiting tactics of 2021, false job offers, family and intimate partners. If you notice, nowhere on this list, you're going to find strangers, right? You're not seeing the hoodie vans here. Again, these are close contacts. These are individualized contact, again, through social media and this and that. This tells me that, one, we've gotten better at protecting ourselves online. You know, we have started to catch on to internet safety, and not only do we preach it to our children, but it's practiced in school and everywhere else, but also that our time online has really shifted, right? 2020 was the height of COVID. It was much higher at that point. It has gone down some, but the, again, honorable mentions in the recruitment category of human trafficking victims goes to detention facilities, mental health facilities, the generalized street, and school. So you look at places with detention facilities and mental health facilities. A lot of times people are coming out of there. They can't leave without a home plan. They have no support. They have no home plan. They want to leave. Someone refers them, you know, a friend of a friend, and then there they are waiting for them when they are released, and directly into, they leave one jail, one prison, one lock-in facility, and go to the next, being a trafficking house or a trafficker. So now we are going to hand it back over to Chelsea, who is going to explain a little bit more about recruitment to us.
Thank you. Am I muted? I can never tell. No, I'm not. Okay, so Erica did a great job talking about recruitment tactics. And I think some people are usually shocked to realize that people don't come into a life of human trafficking in a very violent, sudden manner. It's not, maybe because we're so used to seeing it that way in the media, in movies and TV shows, and then Liam Neeson shows up and saves the day, but that's not how it actually happens in real life. Granted, there are those cases of very sudden kidnapping that does happen, but more often than not, it is a very slow and gradual process. And that's what we call the grooming process. And this is the steps that a trafficker will use to draw in their victims. They might draw them away from their homes, gain their trust, and become the only person in the victim's life so that they have nowhere else to run to. And once they have them in their clutches, it's very easy to maintain control over them. So we're going to look at the steps that a trafficker would take. And it's not like they're checking a checklist off as they go. These things happen very organically. So their first goal is to find the target. They're going to look at those really vulnerable populations that Erica mentioned before. Our homeless youth, our immigrants who might not speak our language or may not be here legally or already have a distrust for the police. People of color, our LGBTQ plus families, those are their main targets. So they're going to find somebody who is very vulnerable, and then they are going to start trying to gain their trust. They might shower them with gifts and attention and make them just feel so special and loved. And once they have an in with that person, they start to recognize what is lacking in that person's life. So what does that victim need me to become? And then the trafficker fills that need. They may become a boyfriend, a father figure, a protector, a best friend, whatever they notice that victim is missing, they will do whatever they can to become that thing for them, so they feel more connected to the victim, and so that it is harder for the victim to recognize the bad things or the bad intentions that the trafficker has. And once they've really gained their trust and they have a relationship built, they will start to isolate their victim. This can typically happen in two ways. Almost every single trafficking case will have some variation of emotional isolation, meaning they are going to do whatever they can to separate them from their family and their friends and their community, so that the only person, the only reliable person in the victim's life is now their trafficker. And in some cases, they may also physically isolate that person. So they may take them from one place to another. They may move them across the country. They may move them to a different town. But one thing I want to make very clear is that trafficking, human trafficking, does not require movement. So you can have people who are trafficked in their own home. We just saw that family members are one of the highest population of traffickers. So you might have parents selling their children, uncles selling their niece and nephews in their own home, in their own town. They don't need to be physically isolated, but sometimes they can be. And then once they've completed these steps 1 through 4, now is when the trafficker will use abusive tactics to really keep control over their victim. The tactics that we see traffickers use are very similar to the tactics that an abusive partner would use in an abusive relationship. So if there's anybody on this call that's joining from another domestic violence program, this is going to sound very similar to you. Or if you've had any domestic violence training, it all sounds almost exactly the same. The 5 most common control tactics that we see are economic abuse, maybe withholding funds or making sure that they have no access to money or their accounts, or destroying their credit, so that even if they do leave their trafficker, you have no leg to stand on financially. Any form of physical violence would be considered physical abuse, but there's also forced drug use, which would fall under physical abuse. It is very, very common for trafficking victims to also have a substance use disorder that oftentimes has been pushed on them by their trafficker. So if you are a smart trafficker, you get this person, your victim, addicted to a drug, and you become their dealer, it is a surefire way to make sure that they come back to you every single day because they need their next fix, because you have essentially put them on a leash. Emotional abuse will happen in every single case of human trafficking. This includes name calling, intimidation, or making the victim feel like they're not worth anything. And we see a lot of gaslighting. For anybody that might not be familiar with gaslighting, it is a very effective form of emotional abuse. The best way I know how to describe it is making somebody feel like they are absolutely losing their mind. We make a victim question their sanity or question their reality, when the reality is that the abuser or the trafficker is the one that is making reality seem fake to them. I know that might not be the best explanation, but again, it's a very effective form of emotional abuse. And if anybody wants to learn more about it, there is a whole World Wide Web filled with information about gaslighting. They will also use threats and intimidation to keep their victim in their clutches. Threats of physical violence, threats of death for our immigrant survivors, threatening deportation or threatening to report them to the police. Just general threats to involve the police in general, because remember, so many of these victims have now used drugs. They have participated in illegal activities, not on their own will, but because they were forced to by their trafficker. And if that victim also has children or pets, that's just a great tool that a trafficker can use to make sure that somebody stays in their place, so to speak. And if there are any parents on the call, you know that if somebody's threatening your children, you're going to do whatever they want to make sure that your children stay safe. And we already talked about isolation a little bit, but in some cases, victims are isolated physically, where they are confined to a certain room or a certain building. They may never be able to go anywhere unaccompanied. So they are isolated in a way where their abuser has all of the communication with the outside world, and they are not allowed to speak to anybody, and they have no freedom to move wherever they please. And another form of isolation is creating a general distrust of the police. So making them feel like the police are out to get them, the police are never going to help them, or because they have participated in illegal activities in the past, they're going to go straight to jail if they go to the police for help. So creating that distrust, again, leaves the only reliable person in a victim's life to be the trafficker. And like we said, these are very similar tactics that you will see in an abusive relationship. I just have this here so that everybody can take a quick look at it. This is also included on the PA Care Partnership website as one of our resources. So I encourage everybody to please visit that site afterwards, maybe download a copy of this, keep it at your desk, keep it in your car, whatever, just that you have it as a quick reference page if you are ever wondering if maybe the person you're working with is a trafficking survivor. All right, so we know who is trafficked, we know who's doing the trafficking, and let's look at the why. Why does trafficking happen in the first place? And the answer is pretty simple. It's because sex sells, literally sex sells. Human trafficking brings in about $150.2 billion per year, and it is the second most profitable industry in the world. Does anybody want to take a guess at what the first most profitable industry is? You can throw that right in the chat if you want to. Oh, I just realized, Erica, I can't see the chat. Do you have eyes on that? Do we have any right
Yes,
answers?
I do. So there's just going through pharmaceuticals, porn, drugs, child porn, retail, professional sports, gambling.
Yeah, these are all really great answers. I did hear you say it though. Drugs is our #1 most profitable industry in the world. And there are a few reasons why human trafficking is so close. Erica and I talked about this the other day. We suspect that in the next few years, human trafficking is going to supersede drugs, if it hasn't already. Remember, because we are just basing this off of statistics, and our statistics are only as good as what's reported. So this might only be a fraction of what the actual issue is. There might be a whole nother population that we're not seeing because it hasn't been reported yet. So I suspect that in the next few years, human trafficking will absolutely supersede drug trafficking. But here's why, right? Humans are a reusable resource. A drug can only be sold one time, and then that trafficker needs to go back to find more product. But you can sell the same person 10 times a day. So you have an endless supply. And to have such a large supply, that means that there has to be a high demand. So if there's a high demand for humans, we have to have a high supply of humans to meet the demand. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to do that. So demand, I'm sorry, let me grab my bearings again. When we say demand, we mean that there's a high demand for people to buy other people. And if we look at the numbers from the trafficking hotline, and if we just break it down into sex trafficking, right? They say that there are 10,570 sex slaves in the United States. So these are 10,570 people who are victims of sex trafficking. If we sold each of them 5 times, that means that there are 5 people buying each of these people per day. We are looking at 52,850 people per day who are buying humans, who are buying sex from other humans. And just for reference, the population of our capital is just over 50,000 people, which means that there are more people every day buying sex in America than the amount of people that live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That is an incredulous number. And this is on the low end. This is saying we sell somebody 5 times, but again, you can sell somebody 10, 15 times in one day. Where does this stuff happen? Anybody want to take a guess at where the top 10 states are, or maybe just our top state? Throw it in the chat. What state do you think comes in at #1 for human trafficking?
So I'm seeing Texas, New York, California, Nevada. They're going faster than my eyes can. Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. All right. You guys are spot on. Coming in at number 1, we have California. I did see that one on the list. I actually think you just read through all of them, which is pretty impressive. Texas, Florida, New York, one of our bordering states, Michigan, Ohio, another bordering state, Missouri, Pennsylvania, rounding out at number 8, Georgia, and Washington. So sorry to tell you this, but Pennsylvania makes the top 10 when we talk about the most cases of human trafficking in the United States. This map is a representation of the hotspots, so to speak, of signals that came into the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So you can see that there are a lot of red zones on the East Coast, specifically up in New England, and then we do have a lot over on the West Coast in California. Not so much happening in the middle. I feel like that's pretty typical. I don't know really what happens out in the middle of the United States, but it looks like maybe it's not human trafficking. That could be a good thing. But does anybody have any thoughts as to why Pennsylvania ranks so high? What puts us in that top 10? For time purposes, we're not going to worry about the chat. I will just tell you. So because of our location, Pennsylvania is so close to so many big cities. You travel an hour, at least where I am right now. If you travel an hour one way, you're going to hit New York City. You travel an hour another way, you're going to hit Newark, New Jersey. We're only 2.5 hours from Harrisburg and Philadelphia. There are a lot of really populated cities where there are more trafficking opportunities. We also have a lot of interstates that run through our state that take you anywhere else in the world. So for traffickers who are looking to relocate their victims, this is one of the best places to do it because you can hop right on the highway and you are home free. So we're going to break down the numbers a little bit more and look specifically at cases in Pennsylvania. So in 2021, there were 1,080 signals to the hotline that originated from Pennsylvania. Those are calls, phone calls into the hotline, texts that they received, web chats, and emails. There were 192 identified cases of human trafficking with 315 victims who were identified in Pennsylvania. So these are 315 people in Pennsylvania who are victims of human trafficking. And 154 of them were females, 17 identified as males, and the remainder were unknown. And 129 adults and 129 adults and 42 minors were identified. Again, these are statistics that come from reports. And as a historically underreported crime, this may only be a small fraction of what is really happening. Because I want you to keep in mind what Erica said earlier. This is hidden in plain sight. So we're not going to call and make a report every time we see a child who doesn't look like the adult that they're with. Children don't always have access to phones. They might not even recognize that they're being trafficked because they are too young or because it's happening in a home where they're supposed to trust the person who is doing it to them. So the sad reality is that these numbers might seem small, but they are probably only a small portion of what's really going on. So let's talk about what you can do in your profession and your personal life to help a victim of human trafficking. We're going to talk a little bit about safety planning. And for anybody who doesn't know, a safety plan is literally just that. It's a plan for safety that we use with victims of all different types of crime. And in Erica and mine and Erica's work, I don't know how to phrase that, safety planning is the pillar of what we do. It is the one thing that every advocate in VIP is trained to do rigorously. I don't know. It's what we're trained to do. And we do a lot of training on it so that we can accurately work with people who come through our doors and everybody who calls our hotline, because our goal is to make people safe. So we're going to talk a little bit about safety planning, but I do encourage you, if this is something that you're not entirely comfortable with, to please, again, contact your local victim service provider, because they might be able to provide you with a training on their services and safety planning. Or if you're working with a victim, referring them to the victim service provider who is also trained to do this every single day. It's one of the best ways that you can help a victim. And the point of safety planning too is to help people come up with a plan that they can review and practice every day, so that in a moment of crisis, they feel more confident in knowing what steps to take to make themselves safe. And the more they practice it, the more they review it, the more it becomes muscle memory. So again, in that moment of crisis, they're not standing there freezing because they don't know what the next step is. They know the next step because they've talked about it, they've practiced it, they've reviewed it a million times. So safety plans are very, very important. So some things that you can consider when you are working with somebody who you think might be in a trafficking situation. First and foremost, please recognize that that person is the expert in their situation. We might think that we know what's best for them, but at the end of the day, they know their trafficker better than we do. They know their situation better than we do. So if they are expressing safety concerns, please hear them. If they tell you it's not safe for them to take copies of your paperwork or copies of your brochure or your business card, please believe them. If that is found on their person or in their bag, it could mean they are in big trouble if their trafficker finds it. So please don't push things, don't push victims to take any kind of materials. And that doesn't just go for trafficking victims, that is victims of any crime across the board. It's important to maintain open and non-judgmental communication. Make sure that they know if they have to hang up, that they are more than welcome to call back. If they don't want to tell you everything, or if they feel like they need to keep some things to themselves, okay, we're here not to judge you, but we're here to help you. So whatever you want to tell me is safe with us, and we just want you to know that somebody's here to help. Whatever you're about to tell us, we are here to help, not to judge. If possible, try to speak with that person in person. And if it's not possible to get them face to face, speaking over the phone is always better than speaking over text or social media messages. Because this way we can ask if the person is alone. We can use yes or no questions, and we know that there's no paper trail, so to speak. And in that same note, trying to establish safe words. A word for when it's safe to talk, a word for when it's not safe to talk, and maybe a word for when they need emergency assistance. And make sure that part of this is, what steps do you want me to take should you use your emergency word? If you're telling me that you need emergency assistance, what is it that you want from me? Do you want me to call 911? Should I call your family? Should I immediately send somebody to your house or to your home? What does it look like when you use your safe words? And then just trying to learn more about their safety concerns and the options that are available to them. So what are their needs and wishes moving forward? What is available to them in your county? How can you report it? Do they want to pursue a protection from abuse order? Where can they do that? Are there shelters in the area that they can go to in an emergency? Do they need counseling? Do they need legal services? And just having an idea of where those services can be found is a huge step and a huge weight off of a victim's shoulders. And if you are planning with somebody who is trying to actively leave a trafficking situation, first things first, in immediate danger, call 911. None of us here, well, at least none of us at VIP are police officers. So we are not going to be able to come in an emergency situation and diffuse the situation and make sure that everybody is physically safe. That is a job for the police. So we always encourage people to call 911 if they are in immediate danger. But if they happen to get outside, if they've been kept somewhere, or they've been moved to a really unfamiliar location, finding any indication of where they actually are is going to be really helpful. Looking for street signs or buildings and offices nearby that might have names on them that they can identify. And if they get outside and they're on a street where there are people, just asking somebody, what city am I in? So that when they call the police, they have something to go on. Or if they call you for help, you know where they are. If they are planning to leave, keeping important documents on or near them, or at least just knowing where those documents are held, is a really important thing. Any ID that they might have access to that they want to bring with them when they leave. That might include their birth certificate, their license or state ID, any credit cards if they still have access to those, any immigration paperwork or any protection orders that they might have already tried for or have been granted in the past. Again, just even knowing where they are is a really helpful tool. And if it is safe for them to do so, having a to-go bag packed and ready to go at a moment's notice is crucial. In here, you can put all of those important documents along with medications or extra sets of keys or extra money that they might have been able to stash away, or anything for their children, if there's children in the situation, their medications, their clothes and shoes, just something that they can take and go that will help them through the next day or two. And just memorizing important numbers or hotlines. So everybody knows 911, but can anybody tell me the number to their local police, to their borough police, or to their state police barracks? Just knowing those numbers, having them on hand and knowing them, having them memorized is a really helpful tool, even if they never actually dial the number. And again, this was a very quick safety planning session. These are just meant to give you that first step. Please, I can't encourage you enough to also try to bring together the victim and their victim service provider in their county, because this is something that we are trained to do very in depth. We have safety plans specifically for people who are still living in a situation, who are getting ready to leave, people who are pregnant, people who are working, and how to stay safe at work, how to stay safe in your car, how to safety plan with your pets. Anything you can imagine, we have been trained to think of all of the possibilities. So this is a great step, but we really encourage you to get them hooked up with their service provider. Okay. So that's it for the informational piece of the webinar, but I do, like I said before, Nancy has uploaded all of the resources to the PA Care website. So even though this, unless you take a picture of it, you might not be able to remember these numbers offhand, but you don't have to worry about writing them down because they are all included on that resource page. The National Human Trafficking Hotline, you can call, you can text, you can chat online if you have tips, but it's also a really great resource for information. So if anybody is looking to dig a little bit deeper and wants to know more than what we were able to talk about and cover in this hour, please feel free, peruse their website. It's just a hub of knowledge. It's really a really great resource. And so are these next few ones: the Blue Campaign by the Department of Human Services, the Polaris Project, the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and the Pennsylvania Coalition to Advance Respect. These are all really wonderful resources that have been vetted, and they are reliable with the information that they are sharing. So again, all of these are on that linked resource page. Please, I encourage you to check them out and just learn more, because the more you know, the more we're able to prevent trafficking from happening. Knowledge is power, and these kind of crimes really thrive in the silence. So thank you for just being here and hearing us and talking about it, because the more we talk, the less these things thrive in our communities. So thank you. And I think that's it. Erica, do you have anything to add before we move into the Q&A?
Nope. I has just asked to share like some of the study links. So I've been doing that in the chat, and I'll continue to do that. I'll also post the PA Cares link again so that you all know exactly where to go for the resources afterwards. And that's also where the recorded presentation from today will be available the next day or so.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Erica. I was just about to say the same thing. And right now I'm going to I'm putting a link in the chat to everyone. There it goes. And that takes you to the page on our website. Although that chat is moving so fast, you could miss it. Let me try again. I'm going to put it in again. What the heck? Here I go. I just want to say again that once the recording of today's webinar is ready to be shared, which will be within the next day or two, I will be sending out an email to everybody who attended today. I know we have some people that are over on YouTube and are a little bit concerned about that. I've asked them, and there are some comments that are in the chat, and Jamal has been keeping his eye on that, and I'm sure he will put the email in again. Is that info at Jamal? Is that a good one to use? Okay, so we've put an email in the YouTube chat for those of you who are in the overflow section, and we thank you for coming and attending. I hear the sound over there is great. And there's an email in there, info at pacarepartnership.org, that just send me an email, and that will have your name. And then I'll make sure that you are on the list of people who attended so that you get the email that has the links to where the recording, the resources, and the evaluation for the day, the certificate of attendance for today, and then any other questions or issues you might have, please feel free to drop them in an email to me there. I also want to take advantage, just take a second here while Jamal is moving himself around. I know we have some questions, but I have pretty good knowledge of what was discussed today, and it doesn't matter. It still just overwhelms me every time I hear it or we talk about it. And it's something that, and I think Chelsea was the one who said it when, or maybe it was Erica, that we are walking past people who are being trafficked. For me, here in Philadelphia, could be every day. And when I first got involved, exactly 10 years ago, I discovered that there was a place where women were being kept who were being trafficked that was 4 blocks from where I lived. At that time, there was a law that people were looking to have passed so that a number, an 800 number, could be posted in all of those truck stops and places across our interstates, so that if somebody needed help, needed to be rescued, all they had to do was call that 800 number. And at that time, I had a speaker that talked a lot about, it sounded like a military event where they go in and they literally grab up the person and rush off with them. And I spent the entire night sending emails to every single person, every representative in Pennsylvania, every senator, every representative, to say, please pass this law to make it legal to post that number to rescue these people. And so we've learned a lot today, and I'm making mention of this because I think there's also many opportunities in advocacy for anybody that would be interested in getting involved. I know that Erica has been a volunteer with VIP in the past. I know that there are many opportunities to volunteer in your counties, and I would encourage people to do that. I also feel that we have an audience of people who work with people with a mental health diagnosis, youth and young adults, and that any of us that do this work need to be educated in this area. And I'd like to see us, if there's an interest, do a follow-up to today so that we can talk more about the questions that you have, some that are here, and some of them that are going to come to mind to you as you're working in the next couple of weeks. And you think to yourself, I wonder how we do this or we do that, or how we discuss whatever it is, they're going to come up. And I'd like to offer everyone the opportunity to have that conversation with these 2 amazing women from VIP again, and maybe within the next month. And I will ask you all that question in the email that goes out after this webinar. I'm also thinking that we could all benefit from a domestic violence training, and I would like to ask these women to come back and do that for us too. So that will be in the email that you receive. I am over the moon that we have had such a turnout and that there is so much interest in this extremely important topic. And I thank you all who are here. And I'm going to, at this point, in a few minutes, I'm going to be putting a link in the chat for asking people to complete the evaluation. And as I always say, and I mean, I read every one of them. And I'd like to hear what comments you have, how we may be of service, and make sure that you get your certificates of attendance if you need them. And so you'll see that link in the chat as well as in the email that goes out. I am now going to officially turn the webinar back over to Chelsea, and thank you both so much for what you've done.
Thank you. Erica, do you know, were there any chats or I'm sorry, any questions in the Q&A that we didn't get to answer yet, besides the ones that are open right now?
One or a couple of the things are involving schools. So one is the Region 4 SAP coordinator for Northeastern PA. She shared her email. And we'll certainly make sure to get in touch with you, Susan. Otherwise, Nicole was asking about programs and stuff like that to high schools, and I figured it would just be easier to tell everybody versus just answering that one. So do you want to take it or you want me to? Okay, I'll take it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was reading I was trying to read all the Q&As. Take it over. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yes, the short answer is yes. We offer various programs to the high schools. And it's actually more than just the high schools. We have child counselors within our program that work within all of the public schools districts in Wayne and Pike counties. Again, every program is different how they do things, and we can only speak to how we specifically operate. So they can work with students one-on-one. They can do groups as well. We also do different prevention type of programs throughout the year. Me personally, because I am more on the medical and healthcare side, I work with the allied health students at the high schools, and I've given a human trafficking presentation, not this exact one, but one very similar. I do a domestic violence one where we really try to get into the mindset of the victim. So it's no longer the why don't they just leave type thing. It really helps them see all of the barriers that unless you're involved in that life, it's just not something that you even think of. We also do for teen dating violence, we do a lot of different prevention programs around that. We've done bullying, we've done quite a bit. What else am I missing, Charles? I can't even think of anymore, but the short answer is yes, we are in the schools, and it's more than just the high schools. We do prevention programs from elementary all the way up.
Great answer.
Real quick, the chat was moving so fast, and I saw a question that got popped in there that didn't make it to the Q&A. So I wanted to ask, excuse me, this question to you both. Dawn would like to know how to bring up the topic with a minor suspected of being involved in trafficking.
That's a good question.
One. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. It's hard because you could try to be direct, and sometimes that would have a really great turnout. Sometimes it doesn't. I would say if you notice those red flags that we talked about, maybe they don't answer questions, there's been dramatic changes in their behavior, missing school, whatever it is that's making you suspect that there's something going on, you can dig deeper. You can ask more clarifying questions. Like, I noticed that you don't, you tend to not answer me directly, and you always let so-and-so answer. If you have this person alone in a room, asking why. What I noticed the slip in grades, what's been going on. And oftentimes if a child just feels comfortable enough, they will tell you something. It just might not be as straight up, I'm being trafficked, because they probably don't recognize it for what it is. You could also, one of the things that we do in our agency, when we have some people that might come in because they've been referred to us from a friend or another professional for domestic violence reasons. And they will tell us, like, I don't even know why I'm here. So we pull out our handy dandy power and control wheel for domestic violence, and we say, let's take a look at this and highlight anything that you think is familiar. And maybe that's something that you can do with a teen. I would also please remind you that if you suspect a minor is in danger, we all have a duty to report that. If you are a mandated reporter, you know the steps. Please make a report to Childline. If you're not a mandated reporter, it doesn't mean that you can't report. Please report things, because at the end of the day, we're not the investigators. They know how to do their job best. So if you think there is a minor who is being trafficked, report it first, and then open up a conversation if you feel comfortable doing so. But making that report is one of the first ways that you're going to be able to help that child. I hope that answered the question.
I think it was a good answer. Thank you.
Let's see, what else do we have? I see somebody asking, how can you become a trainer? I mean, I don't know that we at VIP, at least, we don't necessarily offer like a train the trainer for human trafficking. Again, this is something that I would suggest you reach out to your local program for, because like us, they may have somebody who can come in and do this in a kid-friendly, age-appropriate manner, just like we do in our high school, in our local high schools. So please reach out to your local program to see what kind of training opportunities they offer, whether that's us or a different county. Those resources are on the website.
And I believe, Nicole, I see your follow-up question about, I believe this is in regards to the programs within the schools in Cambria County. So again, that would be, dependent upon that specific organization. So if I know on the resource sheet, Chelsea does have listed like how to find your county program or victim services provider. So definitely get in touch with them and ask them. And they should definitely be able to point you further in that. If you were referring to something else, though, please let us know, because I want to make sure we answer you.
And just to expand on that a little bit, the resources that you'll be looking for will be PCAR, the Pennsylvania Coalition to Advance Respect, which was previously the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape. They just recently changed their name, I think in October. They are the sexual assault program for the state, and they are one of our funders, and they fund each county's program. So there is PCAR, and then there is PCADV, that is the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And then there is the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. Those are your three main resources for finding the places in your county. Some programs are comprehensive, like VIP, where we are trained to work with all of those victimizations, where some counties may have a domestic violence service and a separate sexual assault service. So every county is a little bit different, but if you head to those websites, you'll be able to look up the right place for your service area.
I had a question on YouTube, and I was trying to get a little bit more clarity if it was specifically referring to trafficking. But the question is, do you have any programs geared towards senior citizens?
Oh, Erica, time to shine.
For our senior citizens, little known fact, very common to be victims of human trafficking. Why is that? Because they get lots of benefits, right? Benefits trafficking is huge. Plus, they reach an age where a lot of times they do become more dependent on someone else. And again, what is the number one way that victims get drawn in this country? It's family members. And those adult children, they're out to get us every single time. So I actually, I don't want to say like my one area, but that is my focus within this year, you know, my grant cycle for this year, that I've really been going around and really pushing about intimate partner violence in later life. Within that, we also cover sexual assault with senior citizens and human trafficking. I so far have presented it at all of the senior centers within our 2 counties, and I've done it at 2 different home health agencies. Granted, I just started this in June, this push, so it's still very early, but I know I have 4 or 5 more in the next 3 weeks at various primary care offices, but also looking beyond that to be our physical therapy locations and things of that nature, where the majority of the clientele and patients do revolve demographically with senior citizens. So yes, there are, I know we specifically have that program that we're pushing, but it would change again depending upon where you live and what that specific program is doing in your county. Regardless, they should be able to give information on it though, for sure.
Thank you.
And I know a lot of people were asking, and you guys probably already said it, but I've just been paying attention to this. Do they have to send their email for the certificate of attendance and all that?
Nancy, I'll let you.
Thank you. I'm going to be sending out, I put a couple of links in the chat. I'll put it a couple more times, but to the evaluation, at the end of the evaluation, there's a link to go to certificate of attendance. I will also be putting information about this in the email that goes out to everyone who attended today. Did that answer your question, Erica?
Yes, yep. I was just looking, and I had the Q&A pulled up, so I didn't even see the chat, but I just see now where someone says, yes, last year I had a person who was sold into human trafficking as a baby. Her adopted parents were her human traffickers. Very common, Shelley, and very sad.
I think there's a lot of stories for us to hear.
For sure.
There is. I do see somebody else asking if there are any specific resources for children and young adults with intellectual disabilities. I'm going to be honest, off the top of my head, I don't have any of those. And that's not to say that it's because it's a population that doesn't get trafficked. It's probably a population that doesn't get a lot of attention. So I imagine that there is a high rate of trafficking, especially for people who are severely disabled and need home care. I don't have any specific resources, but that doesn't mean that the resources we did provide don't have anything additional to add. So I would definitely just encourage you to check out those other resources that we posted.
Yeah, and you can most certainly Google about human trafficking among college students and college campuses, because there's a ton of resources devoted to that. I see Anonymous here. They were saying about how, you know, a lot of times when you do have that interaction, they'll refuse, they'll decline. And again, that victim declining services is extremely common. They are incredibly fearful of what's going to happen. You have to remember and just remotely think about the hell that this person is living through, right? And it does not take physical violence to control somebody, as Chelsea was saying earlier. You know, it's as if asking yourself, how far would you go to protect your sibling? How far would you go to protect those that you love, right? If you are with a trafficker, they obviously know a lot of information about you. And to keep you in line, that's okay. If you don't want to do it, so-and-so will, or I'll go pick up your younger sister, brother, whatever, or, you know, that's okay. I know what school, and we'll go there. And that's just a tiny little taste of it. So really there is so much fear. Another question that we're commonly asked is, well, when they're out in public, why don't they say anything? And it's because of those same exact things. And again, we really do underestimate the power of love, right? When we are talking about victims that are involved in intimate relationships with their traffickers, or so they think. I am sure that every single one of us can think of one not so great relationship that we've been in life, whether it's teenage or adult. And, you know, everybody could have told us it was wrong and it wasn't going to work and this and that, but it didn't matter, right? We kept on and we fought and we fought. And even after it was over, we didn't quite see what everybody else saw, right? That took a lot of time. And that's a tiny portion of the human trafficking aspect of it all. A lot of times these victims truly do have love for that person, and they truly are manipulated and brainwashed into thinking that the things they are doing are necessary. And because it is so common for them to come from broken homes or traumatic backgrounds, truly, they don't know any different. Not always, but a lot of times they grew up in broken homes, or they grew up almost being groomed for this to happen, you know, with someone close to them rubbing on them the wrong way or something of that nature. To them, love hurting or love involving that bedroom or whatever, that's not an uncommon thing. That's what they know love to be.
I do see someone in the chat asking if there are states that have laws that are barriers to victims getting help. They have a friend who believes she can't press charges because she was a sex worker and she might get in trouble. I can really only speak to Pennsylvania, so I'm not sure about all of the other states. I do know that in Pennsylvania, anybody can file for a protection order, for a PFA, protection from abuse order. So if that is something that this person would want, they don't ask questions. You don't have to be a legal citizen of the United States. You don't have to have a clean record to get a PFA. Anybody can go to the courthouse and file for a protection order. So I would say it's not true. And this is a really common tactic that abusers and traffickers will use, is a fear of the police, a fear of law enforcement. You've done something wrong too, so you can never get help. And that's just not true. It's just another way to isolate their victim even further. However, there definitely are some laws that, maybe not laws, but human trafficking is really interesting because it's one of the only crimes where we see the victim also being charged. Right?
Yeah, more commonly charged.
Being charged. It's more, right. It is more common to see a prostitute charged than to see a pimp charged or a trafficker charged. And it's just very interesting to me. I don't have any statistics on this, but I commonly think of the fact that if somebody were to just go out and rape a 14-year-old girl, they would be in handcuffs, no questions asked, probably never see the light of day again. But if they bought that person, right, sometimes it's a slap on the wrist, it's a court appearance and a fine for participating in prostitution or for buying a prostitute. So because that minor is now for sale, they don't get in as much trouble for buying sex as they would if they just were a pedophile on the street. It is really just this well, that was depressing, but it is really just a very tangled mess, and it's very complicated, especially when we talk about sex trafficking, because if those prostitutes, those victims aren't willing to give up information about their traffickers, they probably will be charged and they will spend time in jail, and it's very sad.
I think that we have discussed. Oh, go ahead.
Very common for people that are victims of any sort of crime to also be re-victimized by police, sometimes by medical communities, sometimes in schools. And by re-victimized, I'm talking about people not believing them. The only thing that you can do in that situation is to just continuously tell them, you know, that first of all, you do believe them. You know, it's been proven time and time again that when someone discloses any sort of abuse, the way that we respond immediately determines if that person will ever speak of this ever again. And it doesn't matter what type of abuse it is. If we do not respond in that believing, validating way, like it's not our job to investigate it, right? Unless it's directly your job, then why do you need all those questions or answers or information? So that is the only thing that you can do, is to just keep supporting them and to keep reassuring them that, you know what, I'm not going to lie, there are some in any profession that are probably very jaded and no longer have the empathy for the people they serve, but not everybody is like that.
Jamal, I think we've just about run out of time, and I'm feeling like there are so many topics here where we could continue this discussion. So I'd like to do that. I'd like to get some feedback from our audience through the evaluation and our emails, and discuss how we may be of use to our audience if we were to continue this conversation, and what were the topics we would discuss. The one that struck me was a person who was willing to share their story. We hear a lot of stories, but I don't know that I've ever heard anyone share their story when it comes to this topic. So I think there are many opportunities here. And again, I'm going to thank you all, and I'm going to step back and let Jamal close us out.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Chelsea and Erica for a wonderful presentation. Very informative. People are very much looking forward to some type of follow-up. So we will be in touch to maybe discuss what that looks like Nancy was saying. Thank you all for coming. Our next webinar will be on the 28th. So keep your eyes peeled for that notification. And with that, I would like to say have a good day, everyone. And I hope to see you soon.